Howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast number 354, Style and Standard. How you folks doing? I hope you are definitely hydrating out there. Boy, the temperature's cranked up. I was in, what would you do in summertime if you're Crazy Moose? You'd go to Arizona. That's what I did last week. It was 114 down there in Tucson. Thankfully, I was up in the mountains, up in Madera Canyon at spectacular Santa Rita Lodge, where it got to about 86. But oh man, it was hot. The bird photography was sizzling. What a great week! And it's amazing how technology and biology, with the passage of time, really can make photography not just more enjoyable and more rewarding, but just a life enlightening process. So, yeah, what a great week. I hope yours is as good as well. This is being recorded again on Adobe Podcast Beta, with the transcript being linked on the podcast blog. Now, when I open up the Adobe Podcast Beta, it tells you how many minutes it has recorded so far in this little, congratulatory, pump you up kind of statement. And it got me to wondering, and how many minutes have I put into podcasting since I started this thing? So I got out the old calculator. Any guesses? I was blown away. And I want to thank you guys for listening to my 5,310 minutes of rambles. Yeah, that's how much time that I have recorded in podcasts over all this time. 5,310 minutes. That's just crazy talk. But hey, that's what I do here, crazy talk. So I want to thank you guys for sponsoring the Moose Podcast and being part of it all. If you guys weren't here, I wouldn't be doing it. Also want to thank my other great sponsors, Bedfords.com. Yep, Bedfords. Yeah, they just keep rocking it. I know a bunch of you have pre-ordered those new Nikon Zooms, the 18600 and the 8170. Exciting stuff. I know a bunch of you have gotten your Z8s like myself from Bedfords. Great stuff there. I mean, those guys, they're champions. I appreciate them so much. Make sure you head there. Make sure you tell them Moose sent you. Get that 5% off at the end there when you check out, as well as all that great service, great gear. Bedfords.com. Thank you, guys. Well, I want to get into this week's topic, style and standard. And it comes from a running conversation I had this past week, which was a challenge up in the mountains. We had some really great thunderstorms, and with the satellite they use for their internet constantly getting interrupted / shut down with the electrical storms, it was a challenge. But my conversation, talking with a gentleman, a wildlife photographer, and he was seeking some help. And my typical style, my typical way in which I try to help is I gather information. It's just what I do. I gather information and I pull together as much as I can, no matter what I'm trying to do, which includes helping, because the more informed I am, the better I can, you could say, take everything apart, see how it is or isn't working, and then try to reassemble it to help someone get to where they're trying to go. And I do it for two reasons. One, because I really like to help, and two, I love the problem solving. So in this case, this wildlife photographer was having issues getting the photograph they wanted. And in digging down into the situation, because typically it is the camera equipment that gets blamed. It's the camera's fault. And, it's not. It's us. But so digging down, yep, it wasn't the camera's fault. So then it was the photographer's fault. Well, not that I could point my finger and say it's your fault, but that's why what came up to my attention and why I'm doing a podcast on style and standard. So to cut to the chase, because it was a bit lengthy, this particular photographer, basically, a picture is not a photograph for this photographer if it's not been, for lack of better terms, manipulated by Photoshop. And we're not talking about AI. You could, it's just a little small step for this photographer to just simply go all AI. I mean, I don't know if you saw the Adobe Premiere AI sneak peek this last week, where they basically, in a video, fill in the entire set with AI generative fill, like they're doing with Photoshop, which, with Photoshop, right, is just one frame. With video, it could be 25 frames per second it's filling in. I mean, that's a lot of computing. But anyway, no, this particular, get off back to the topic. This photographer, every photograph sees Photoshop. But I'm not talking about just cropping. I'm not talking about just removing spots. I'm not talking about dealing with color grading or sky replacement. I'm talking about all of that and more. Now, the photographer wants to be accurate to the subject. So you might imagine right off the bat, I'm like, wow, how are we staying true to this and faithful to the subject with all this image manipulation? And they went through, they told me their logic and their reasoning, which I'll be honest, it went flying over my head. Did not understand it at all. But still trying to help, because the person was very sincere, very honest, and was very troubled. And I don't know if I've helped them yet. I don't think this conversation is over with. But it came up, the word style and the word standard. And we all have, I think, different definitions for both style and standard. And, being an old-timer at this thing, standards are really important. It's kind of the building blocks, at least that I use and a lot of my peers, to go to the next step in improving our photographs, while having a foundation that when we have clients, the standard that they're paying for, the confidence that we're going to deliver, is actually delivered. But that thing called style, photographers really, and it comes up quite a bit. You see it on social, you see it on articles and stuff, defining your style. And so this photographer who wants to be faithful, but using he was using stuff, they were using stuff in Photoshop that I had either have forgotten it was there, or wasn't aware of, and I had to do homework. It was a challenge. But they kept saying, I want to have a consistent style. And I'm like, wow, how do you have style when you are pushing every button in Photoshop or the public beta they got out there, and with no real standard? And that was what stumped them. His, wanting style stumped me, and standard stumped them, because a standard, how do you do both? How do you have style and a standard? A standard is something that if you are going to be a full-time photographer in a particular genre or field, and you want to be successful, have return clients, want to grow your clients, you got to have a certain standard that everybody says, okay, for Moose Peterson, everything we know is going to be sharp, and the color is going to be really outstanding. Those are some of my standards. The other standard is they know that what they're seeing is what I shot, and I'm not replacing the sky. I'm not removing twigs. That's not what I do. So my style and my standard kind of go hand in hand. And it's one that's well established, one that for myself is is well practiced and well maintained after all these decades. So the photographer really wanted to have a style, and I was really stumped. So that's part of the podcast is I don't have all the answers. I might have had 5,310 minutes of ramblings on this thing, but it still doesn't mean I have all the answers. And in this day and age where I think this photographer is probably at the moment might be the rare case, I think it's probably going to be common in the next few years. And so that brings up, how do we as an industry have standards that we can put forth and build on? It came to mind, I was watching a thing on the current writer's strike and actor strike that's going on in Hollywood. And there was a writer on, and they were saying that AI writing, while it might be grammatically correct, which for me could be, an improvement, an AI has never given birth to a baby, never loved another person, has not smelled flowers, not gone birding, and know the joys of finding a species for the first time. And it got me to thinking, yeah, that's, AI is working towards this thing called perfection, which I think perfection is really boring. So then in this particular photographer's style of doing all of this stuff, think about all the work they're going through to go out and get the shot, then do all this stuff in post. I was like, wow, did that person actually understand that critter when they made that picture? Are they actually telling a story visually, or are they just going through the numbers because they can? And in that process, where do you find or start or continue on with a standard? Now, I think these questions that are going through my mind that this photographer brought up, I think are going through many of mine right now, just with the thing of AI. And that's where I think style and standard might actually come out to be more relevant than they have been. So if your style is dependent on your own devices, for example, I was photographing hummingbirds, and I use hummingbird feeders to bring the subject close to me. But I don't want that feeder in the photograph the vast of the time. I want the aerial dance that the hummingbirds perform as they do the crazy things they do. I want that to be center stage, not some red piece of plastic. And yeah, it'd be very simplistic, very easy today in Photoshop to remove that feeder. So all you see is the hummingbird. Now, if you adopt that approach, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'm not the one to say it's right or wrong. I can tell you, I physically don't have the time to go through. I think I came back with about 9,000 images of hummingbirds. I don't have the time to go and remove hummingbird feeders from 9,000 images. I just don't have that kind of time. So getting it right in the camera for myself has not only been a style and a standard, but literally a business make or break point. Because when I come back, if I have to spend another week to have images from another week, from a week of shooting. That's 2 weeks of time investment. I'll never make that kind of money back from images. So my style and standard are in this case, that my style is to move the camera and get the photograph when I can of the hummingbird coming into that flower without including that flower. Now, as we move forward, we are going to have to sit there and think about this thing called the style that we want in our visual storytelling that we can use and grow upon, then the standards in which we are going to apply them. And that answer, I don't think, is going to be global. I don't think it's going to be one sentence. It's going to come down from some mountaintop. That we are going to have to figure out this process as things keep moving forward. Because there are some people who are very much, bringing out the AI Terminator, panic calls. There's others that are saying it's going to change our life, which, it's made things some simpler already. But in this process of being a visual storyteller, being unique, having a style and having a standard that we can stand and be proud of, we are all going to have to think about this issue for ourselves. And that's really kind of the point of this podcast. I might give you words of advice now and then. I might say something that will trigger a thought one way or the other. But I don't have the one answer. Didn't have it for this photographer. And I have most of it for myself. But then, I'm in a different place than a lot of other photographers. So I appreciate you coming by and listening. I hope this gives you some food for thought and maybe an answer or two to start moving forward. And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to move that ball forward in every way possible, in our heads, in the camera, on the computer, and on the page. Go out and make everything great this week. And remember to make every click your story.